Hello and welcome back to Max and Vito's, or Vito's and Max's A-Push Journey. My name is Max Bramble and I'm here with
Vito Geraci.
And today we will be talking about Unit 4, 1800 to 1848. Let me get into it, starting off with the famous President Thomas Jefferson. Fierce debates ensued among the Democratic Republicans and the Federalists on numerous issues. Two of the main debates were Americans' foreign relations and the size of federal power in domestic policy. In regards to America's relations to foreign powers had to do with the Barbary Wars. Originating from the 1770s, the United States government had paid tribute to the Barbary states in return for protection of the U.S. merchant ships. This was a policy enacted by previous Federalist presidents Washington and Adams. Jefferson showed opposition to bribes in regards to trading, so he ordered secession to those bribes, which resulted in Barbary pirates stopping their protection of the U.S. merchant vessels, and these pirates began attacking them instead. In response, Jefferson sent the big old U.S. Navy in retaliation. Though tensions rose into war, Jefferson's administration negotiated a reduced tribute to the Barbary states. The Democratic Republicans showed favor of a strict constructionist view of the Constitution, which meant they believed that the federal government should only have power within the parameters of what the Constitution states they are vested. The Federalists displayed a contrasting opinion by having a loose constructionistic view, which meant the powers vested onto the federal government could be more flexible and was up to interpretation based on the Constitution's wording. Now, Vito, let's go on into the Louisiana Purchase.
So, after the Haitian Revolt of 1791, which showed a victory of the Haitians against our croissant-loving friends out in Europe, the French.
They love their croissants, I'm not gonna lie, and I love them too.
In which they gained their independence from France, Jefferson saw this event as an opportunity to expand westward and gain navigation rights to the west of the Mississippi. So Jefferson sent his buddy James Monroe to France with $2 million to secure those rights from Emperor Napoleon. And with the loss of Haiti, Napoleon supposed that the Louisiana Territory was kind of useless. And so the United States produced an acquisition from France of the entire territory for $15 million. And when they purchased it, Congress immediately sponsored funds for a discovery expedition led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark. So the infamous duo, Lewis and Clark, hopped along their exploration of the expansive new territory. With their expedition starting in 1804, they traveled thousands of miles up the Missouri River, ending up at the Pacific coast. The southern part of the territory was explored by a lesser-known guy and a cartographer named Zebulon Pike, which is why Pikes Peak is called Pikes Peak, in 1806. And the travels of these two expeditions created accurate mapping of the territory, as well as significant scientific, ecological knowledge of the region, and increased diplomatic relations with the Native Americans. So everything that came out of this was pretty good.
All right.
But
then the War of 1812. France and Britain were fighting each other, and the U.S. remained neutral in the conflict. However, France and Britain were both seizing U.S. merchant ships, and the U.S. suffered naval impressment from the British Empire. Newly westward U.S. settlers were having issues with Native Americans, and paranoia ensued among the settlers that the British were responsible for this. As a result, the U.S. declared war on Britain in June of 1812. Hey, that's my birthday month. But nobody cares. Anyways, let's continue on. The involvement in the war was divided against the two parties. The Democratic Republicans were in favor of the war, and the Federalists were extremely not in favor of it. The United States won the war against the British, and the Federalist opposition to war led to the ultimate demise of the party. All in turn, this led to the era of good feelings, and Vito, take us right into it.
while we like as Americans to be optimists, the era of good feelings was actually filled with mixed feelings. But a national unity was brought under the Democratic Republican Party, which was the only party of the United States at the time. But this political discourse still raged out throughout the United States. The Democratic Republicans showed opposition to the National Bank and allowed the National Bank Charter to expire in 1811, destroying Hamilton's dreams. Sad stuff. Resulting in difficulties in raising funds without a reliable source of credit without the bank. With state power obtaining reliable means of infrastructure and transportation posed difficulty, exemplifying regional interests over states' importance, which the Democratic Party loved, state importance. But Henry Clay's American system was fabricated of many legislators and policies, which included 1. A federally funded internal improvements, 2. Implementation of protective tariffs, and 3. Reestablishment of the Bank of the United States. But James Madison vetoed the first provisions because of their potential for expanded federal power. But the 2 other provisions were passed.
Now that takes us to the Talmadge Amendment. During westward expansion, Missouri applied for statehood in 1819, and settlers had brought thousands of slaves with them into Missouri. However, New York Congressman James Talmadge created an amendment to Missouri's statehood application that prohibited the practice of slavery. The reason behind this was to create a balance between slave and free states in the Senate. These actions led to a notion of probable civil war and division in the Union. In order to prevent this, Henry Clay proposed the Compromise of 1820, which is more commonly known as the Missouri Compromise. So big an A-push learned so much about it. What is your favorite thing, Vito?
What's my favorite thing of A-push?
Yeah, mine was the Missouri Compromise. What about you?
I don't know.
You're taking too long. Next, which would admit Missouri as a slave state, but prevents problems from occurring in the future expansion westward. They established the 3,630 parallel. The southern border of Missouri, also referred to as the Mason-Dixon line, would be the line to separate slaves south of the line and free states north of the line. And that's going to move us on to westward expansion. Vito,
which now I think is my favorite subject, and I'm so glad to bring up westward expansion.
And let's prove to me why you're excited about it.
I'm so excited because westward expansion was so crucial to the United States, and in 1816, Democratic Republican candidate James Monroe won the presidency. He immediately sent John Quincy Adams, son of John Adams, to England. On his visit in England, John Quincy Adams negotiated treaties that established the U.S.-Canadian border at the 49th parallel and the U.S.-British occupation of the Oregon Territory. Monroe's intentions for the southern border was to limit the influence of Spain within North America. He once again used Adams to create the Adams-Onis Treaty of 1819, which Spain sold Florida to the United States, which in turn created our southern border. You want to take us into the Monroe Doctrine?
I really do. 2 years after the treaties between the United States and British about borders and the Adams-Onis Treaty, many Latin American countries gained independence from Spain. As a reaction to this, Monroe created the Monroe Doctrine of 1823, which specifically announced that the Western Hemisphere would be the U.S. sphere of influence without any European influence. That's going to put us in the market revolution, and Vito, you're going to take that away.
The market revolution. The market revolution is so important. The market revolution developed the connection of northern industries with western and southern farms. This was influenced by numerous advances in agriculture, industry, transportation, and communication. 2 notable events and inventions were the Eli Whitney's cotton gin and James Hargreaves' spinning jenny. The cotton gin significantly reduced the process of separating seeds from cotton fibers with more efficient, which gravely brought fortune into the industry in the South. And the spinning jenny expedited the process of spinning cotton into yarns, which greatly assisted in northern textile mills. The advent of interchangeable parts prior to this advent, products were fabricated by artisans for the entire duration of manufacturing, but machines instead were able to produce the many different parts in bulk in which the laborers would then assemble. This became the basis of the American systems of manufacturing, which was the division of labor into different but separate, specific, repetitive tasks that were performed by laborers. Hence, it was mass production. But river travel also became more efficient because of the advent of the steamboat. In the market revolution, building of canals such as the Erie Canal, which stretched across the state of New York, the Erie's canal's success helped create quickly a massive campaign to construct canals across all the U.S. But the canal business was quickly went to a demise with the development of railroads in the 1830s. This was assisted by the government funding towards railroad companies, thus connecting American industry on a level never seen before. This in turn led to the promotion of agriculture in the West because of new high levels of accessibility. Northern urban centers experienced an industry and popular diversity growth. Between 1820 to 1840, close to 2 million immigrants came upon American shores. These immigrants were mostly from Germany and Ireland, in which these immigrants made up a workforce of cheap labor. But most of these immigrants cramped up in poor urban housing conditions and worked in industrial occupations, while other immigrants wanted, a little more free and open air, so they established homesteads and farms in the West. But during this period, a middle class emerged, and this was primarily found in the North, which was made up of businessmen, shopkeepers, doctors, and lawyers. These people were able to spend money on leisurely activities like attending plays or sporting events, and women during this period found themselves into conformity with the social norm known as the cult of domesticity. The cult of domesticity was the belief that women's lives revolved around housework and childbearing and providing for a husband. And her husband's job was to go outside and provide for them. And this norm was disseminated through books, posters, and magazines. And this ideology was not prevalent amongst lower classes because when you are poor, you need everybody to work to help you survive. Now you want to take us into the Panic of 1819?
I would want nothing more. The Panic of 1819. The United States experienced their first major recession, which was caused by irresponsible banking practices and a lower demand for exports. The group that fell the most victim to the Panic of 1819 were working men who desired to hold politicians accountable for failures of regulating banks. However, these working men were inhibited from making any political change because they were not able to vote, as voting was mostly reserved for white male property owners. This was pressure towards East Coast politics because Western frontier states had already established male suffrage. So by 1825, the majority of East Coast states had either limited or eliminated property qualifications for voting. Due to these reduced qualifications for voting, an increased number of voters led to a divide in the Democratic-Republican Party in the 1824 elections. These two factions were as follows: National Republicans, who were loose constructionists, and the Democrats, who were strict constructionists. For this complicated election, the National Republicans chose Federalist-leaning John Quincy Adams and Henry Clay, while the Democrats chose Jeffersonian Andrew Jackson. They loved him. They really did. What do you think, Vito?
Jackson. Yeah, Jackson was a
legend. Who did you like more, Quincy or Jackson?
I don't know. Probably Quincy. Jackson, he had his fair share of troublemaking.
Absolutely.
But we all do, so...
With Adams and Jackson being the main candidates for the presidency, Adams' campaigning strategy involved other people campaigning for him across the country, while Jackson campaigned himself across the country, attracting masses. The election resulted with Jackson winning the popular vote, but since there was a tie in electoral college votes, the Constitution ruled that the decision would go to the House of Representatives. Led by National Republican Henry Clay as Speaker of the House, his supporters viewed this as a corrupt bargain. In 1828, the two factions were now separate parties. The National Republicans became the Whigs, led by Henry Clay, and the Democrats continued as the Democrats under Andrew Jackson, again campaigned the way he did in 1824, and he finally won the election.
But not all great things happen, and those troublemaking, abilities of Andrew Jackson led to some of the most tragic events in American history, which was the Trail of Tears. The acquisition of native lands had been an issue during the Jackson administration, and a stance on this issue was expressed by the Indian Removal Act of 1830. The Cherokee Nation of Georgia declared sovereignty, and the whites of Georgia did not acknowledge their sovereignty and perceived the Cherokee as living upon their lands. So the Cherokee were forced to resettle west of Mississippi, but they refused because they wanted there to be on their land. And they challenged the Indian Removal Act in the Supreme Court in Worcester versus Georgia. The Supreme Court ruled that the Cherokee was a sovereign nation and that Georgia did not bear the right to pass state laws in the Cherokee Nation. And in 1835, the U.S. had the Cherokee, without permission of their chief, sign the Treaty of Echota, which guaranteed the Cherokee a reservation west of the Mississippi as an exchange for their land in Georgia. And if the Cherokee did not move, the U.S. forcibly marched them into their territory in what would now be known as the Trail of Tears. How sad.
No one fall asleep on us, yes, because now we're getting into some really good stuff. The Second Great Awakening. Gets me excited every time.
So angelic.
With American want for a distinct American culture following the 1828 publication of Noah Webster's American Dictionary and its dissemination across the country for educational purposes, American philosophy emerged with the It's a very tongue twister. What do you... Transcendentalist.
Transcendentalist movement.
Purposes. American philosophy emerged with the Transcendentalist movement. Transcendentalism had obvious romantic era European influences that revolved around human perfectionism and human emotion and passion, in contrast to the Enlightenment, which focused on rational thought. Transcendentalists focused on the beauty transcended by nature, with its most influential philosophers being Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. The Transcendentalist movement found itself overlapping among the abolitionists, women's suffrage, and temperance movements. The Transcendental movement was responsible for the creation of utopian communities, most notably the Oneida community.
Yeah.
The Oneida were a group of Christians. Oneida. See, this is why we work together. You help me and I help you. Mainly you help me, though.
It's okay. We're a team. We're in this together.
We really are. The Oneida were a group of Christians who believed that Christ became the second time. What?
Christ returned.
You're being really rude now. I can take... I'm joking. Christ returned. I just realized you were talking about Christ returning. You weren't trying to fix an error. Oh, that's on me.
It's okay.
Christ came back the second time recently, and to avoid this in a world, they must live communally in a holy family and share each other's wives. I would never do that, but would you ever do that? Would you ever share your wife, Vito?
Nah.
Yeah. This led to the Second Great Awakening, in which Methodists and Presbyterians would organize camps in the woods and would preach in such seclusion for weeks for egalitarian audiences. However, this egalitarian entailment was not shared across the Second Great Awakening, when the Southern Baptist Church separated from the Northern Baptist Church because of the Northern Baptist support for abolition. Preachers in Second Great Awakening focused on society morals rather than the First Great Awakening's focus on moral of oneself, which in contrast, importantly, set the stage for the temperance movement, and the American Temperance Society was founded in 1826 by clergymen and businessmen, and they targeted middle-class men with abusive alcohol tendencies. The American Temperance Society rapidly formed 5,000 chapters across the U.S., and that's going to take us into abolitionism.
Well, yeah.
Take us away, Vito. Just take us away and close us out before our viewers fall asleep on us.
Okay, abolition movements were dominated by white Quakers and African former slaves in the 1820s. But thanks to the journals like The Liberator, the papers led to the founding of the Anti-Slavery Society. But Northern support for abolition wasn't unanimous, as Northern merchants, laborers, and manufacturers were anti-abolitionists due to the threat of the cotton and sugar trade, and it would put laborers out of jobs. But women wanted to help. But women realized in order for them to help the slaves, they must help themselves first, so they want to gain their own rights. And that is what set the groundwork for women's rights, and that's what set the groundwork for abolitionism. And that, I think, today concludes our episode.
It absolutely does. Thank you, everyone, for listening to episode 3, Unit 4. Please stick around for the next episode, because it's only getting better and better every episode. Vito, what do you have to say to them?
American history is fascinating. Please stay tuned, and please stay on board for our new episode.
Australian history is better, but we'll continue. Bye.
Bye.